I'd like to use my time here today to share 5 key things I've learned over my 10 years of helping people coming off psychiatric drugs, hoping this will be helpful for someone here. The first thing I've learned is that it's not just about the taper. Coming off these drugs is a profound, or can be a profound, psychological, social, existential even process. So people are not just tapering off a drug, they're often also tapering an identity or a self-story built about being medicated and labeled. Stories like, there's something deeply wrong within me. I'm defective, crazy, broken. Or my emotions is dangerous territory. And sometimes those stories need gradual tapering too, right? We can't just replace them overnight. Our self-stories tend to resist change, even when the new story is kinder, more hopeful, truer even. If something's been part of our inner narrative for years, decades maybe, it kind of lingers. And it absolutely will pop up again in moments of crisis or lows. Rear its ugly head up again. What if they were right about me? The shift from there's something wrong with me to I was having a normal reaction to life, to adversity, to trauma, to needs unmet, dreams shattered, goals blocked, can be a profound one and can be a part of the tapering too. And honestly, I find myself with my clients, oftentimes I find myself kind of cleaning up after psychiatry, helping them, my clients, repair their beliefs about and in themselves and about their reactions to the world, untangling what was them and what was the drug, of course. And then comes something no one was warned about, the return of the full, messy, raw range of emotion when you're coming off the drug. See, drugs are primitive treatments, most of them just numb and narrow. And that transition from having had your mind, your emotions, your body numbed to once again feeling the whole thing, even just a normal, whatever that is, emotional range. Emotions are strong forces that can be part of the taper too. Again, accessing that full range of emotions without being overwhelmed, it's no small transition. You kind of wake up to yourself, depending on, of course, what effect the drug has had on you. You can kind of wake up to yourself. That can be a mixed experience at first, depending on what you're waking up to. A successful taper, I often find myself doing kind of an emotions 101 as a therapist. Back to basics. What's anxiety? What's sadness? What's sorrow? What's shame? What's an emotion? Okay, it's something that wants to move us. Emotion, it's even in the name. It's a signal. It's information. It's a protector. It's a lot of things. So that was the first thing, that it's not only about the taper. The second thing I've learned is that sometimes it is just about the taper. Certainly, many people remain on these drugs for years and decades, not because they want or need the effect or because the underlying problem is still there, but purely and simply because withdrawal keeps them from stopping. And every time they try, following the rapid, harmful guidelines that have been poisoning our field for decades, they crash so badly, forced back onto a drug they don't like taking. These are the people who would throw away the pills tomorrow if they could, if their bodies allowed them, but it doesn't. It's become dependent after years of use. It's adapted. I see people every day where the drug's only function is to suppress the withdrawal state it itself has created. Psychiatric drugs, all psychiatric drugs, can cause dependence in the sense that the absence of withdrawal literally depends on continuous intake of the drug, which of course is what creates this, we could say, illusion of effect, that every time you stop too fast, it looks like you still need it back on, and the symptoms resolve very rapidly. And the solution, of course, to dependence is tapering, gradually lowering the dose, sometimes over years, allowing the body time to adapt. So many of these people, the psychological work is done. They've processed their trauma, understood their emotions, triggers, changed their lifestyle, changed their diet, changed their relationship with themselves. They're ready. For them, the only question is how to get these drugs out of their system without destabilizing it too much, finding the taper rate their body can tolerate. And yet, in that situation, our biggest obstacle is purely physical, that the standard doses, the standard tablets you could buy at the pharmacy are not designed for tapering. They're too strong. They're far too strong. And of course, this is something the layperson withdrawal community has known for decades. To come off without severe withdrawal, you have to go way lower than the lowest standard available dose. And that's when the office starts looking very funny with syringes and water and capsules and beads and stuff. Simple in theory, really. Complicated in practice, which brings me to number 3, which is that tapering is both highly predictable and unpredictable at the same time. Predictable in the sense that we know that dose reductions have to get smaller and smaller. We know the biology. And we know at some point they have to get much smaller to follow that curve all the way down to 0. And most of people will hit that one reduction that, even though it wasn't bigger than the previous ones in terms of milligram, it suddenly hits much harder because we found that bend on the curve, forcing them down to the 10, 5, 3, 1% reductions at a time, which is what makes it take so much time. And even though I see this every day for 10 years, and even though after doing the meta-analysis of the receptor occupancy studies myself, it still to this day continues to amaze me just how small reductions the body can detect and react with withdrawal in that lower dose range. But at the same time, unpredictable because we never know exactly when that reduction will be, when we're forced to go slower, let alone exactly by how much. Even with all our fancy graphs which show the average occupancy rates, each nervous system appears to reveal its sensitivities in real time. And the art is, of course, to adjust according to that, titrate against the level of symptoms. And sometimes this means microtapering, like doing even tinier reductions more steadily, calculated with astonishing precision. And a lot of people in this room here today will know how to help people to calculate that. It can really be a true lifesaver, especially for people whose nervous system has been kindled by previous failed attempts. And so there is this annoying element of trial and error to coming off psychiatric drugs, balanced, of course, with respecting always that harm can be done if we push it too fast. So there's a limit to the experimentation. And most people, at least most of the people I talk to, are scared. There's some element of being scared. Past failed attempts have taught them to respect these drugs a lot. And the message to you, when you find your hyperbolic/microtaper rate, the individual one, things start to change, and the difference can really be like night and day. The fourth thing that I've learned is that people look for things, some people at least, to add or take. But healing often comes from what we remove. Naturally, people ask, because it's so unpleasant, what can I take to speed this up? What can I do? What supplement? What protocol? In other words, if there's a quick fix for withdrawal. And beyond the basics of omega-3s and magnesium and electrolytes, I've become increasingly convinced that it's the other way around, through removing things. Inflammatory foods, blood sugar spikes, sugar maybe even completely, ultra-processed dyes, pesticides, and so on. The idea being that the body wants to heal itself, and it knows how to heal itself if we let it. So our job is not to get in its way, more so than it is to actively intervene the nervous system and speed up the process, or at least try to speed up the process, which is a different thing, right? We can't force receptors to adjust faster, but we sure can provide the body the best possible conditions to do its thing. And that's a different thing, mainly through what we choose to put in our bodies, because it is a choice. It may become a habit, but it is a choice. Rebuilding receptors requires energy. That makes sense, the right kind of energy. And the brain prioritizes this weaning off process, hence the symptoms. That's why you feel so bad in the process. Mood, motivation, energy, drive, all less important when there's danger ahead, which is basically what the nervous system thinks there is when we've perturbed it with a dose reduction, thus temporarily deprioritizing these in the body's hierarchy. And this is where I believe, and I'm biased in that because I've been on it for 8 years of my own life, so I'm kind of starstruck by it, but this is where I believe ketogenic metabolic approaches hold promise. Eating high-fat, low-carb, moderate protein, and the fasting, giving the body that autophagy, removing foods. After all, the brain is the fattiest organ in the body, so it kind of makes sense that keto can stabilize the foundation naturally much stronger than any supplement you can take or add. So let's keep it simple. The brain has a hierarchy. The more tasks you give it, the more it has to do and the less efficient it has to be. And there's no wonder that if you hand your body a lot of glucose and insulin spikes that it has to keep fixing every day, that withdrawal takes longer if you give it another task on top of withdrawal. I don't have a big major RCT proving this, but so doesn't many of the practices mainstream psychiatry use, right? And hence the body's preferred state, which I'm no expert in explaining why, I can just feel it, ketosis, can sometimes ease withdrawal because there's simply more energy. The rest is up to the body, and your job is to leave the symptoms alone once you've tapered correctly, obviously, like a wound almost. And I mean that literally, and readers of my book will know what I mean with leaving something alone. I mean it literally, in the sense that our symptoms and the way we have it are under attentional control. And they tend to step into the background when we focus outwards. Sounds simple, strong psychological mechanism to master. For example, I'm fairly sure that for every one of you here, it feels a certain way to sit on the chairs right now. We also have that very characteristic sensation inside our mouths all the time. Well, those are two examples of things that I think you didn't pay attention to before this idiot up here said it. And therefore, they didn't take up a lot of space in your awareness. What changed? Attention, nothing else. And in a couple of seconds, I promise you they'll be gone again. Now, stupid example maybe, but it shows the mechanism. Something can definitely be there without being in our awareness, and that is something we can train. We decide we can, in any moment we want, to turn our attention outwards. We just have to learn how to do that when it's painful and it's pulling in our direction. But it's definitely a skill that we can learn, which is one of the, when looking for natural ways through withdrawal, that's your go-to. And there are a lot of fancy exercises to actually train that. The fifth is a bit different. Sorry. The deprescribing is dangerous work because it challenges a paradigm, if not directly, then indirectly. So deprescribing threatens identities, careers, professional self-concepts, and if there's one thing that we should fear, it's humans' professional self-concepts. Most people working in this space face pushback, ridicule, attempts in discrediting, isolation, pressure to conform. I myself have been reported to various ethics committees and patient safety boards back in Denmark for simply helping patients taper slower. Not by a client, never by a client, we've never heard that, but by, well, usually psychiatrists out there who, I believe, find our message inconvenient. And I remember actually a Zoom meeting last year with some of you here present where I told you about these attacks and what I should do, and your response was absolutely perfect. Congratulations, and you smiled. That means you've done something right, and now they're trying to silence you because you've become a threat. And I really, really think that is a very valid, legitimate mechanism in this field. And honestly, this resistance makes sense. It does. Because if what we say about withdrawal is true, if it can mimic relapse this closely and be this severe, well, then the foundation of psychiatric drug efficacy kind of crumbles. If these silly discontinuation or relapse prevention trials turn out weren't measuring relapse at all, but withdrawal, or at least part of it withdrawal, well, then the entire evidence base changes. And we can't have that. And with that, large parts, I believe, of mainstream psychiatry's legitimacy. So we're challenging the assumptions that hold the system together, at least some of them. And I've come to believe of psychiatry as it's a fragile system, right? It has some very fragile assumptions. And systems, especially large ones, always try to rid themselves of noise. That's the nature of a system. It's what makes it a system. And I believe we are, to some degree, that noise, which is why we need to do this stick together and have the communities and to withstand this pressure, just as I was helped last year by many of you here. And the sixth thing, yes, there's a sixth thing on my list of 5. It sounded better with 5. Is that it's worth it, tapering, coming off, because people get themselves back. Yes, withdrawal is worse and trickier and more severe than we were told, and that kind of sounds like a negative story. But if it means that a lot of the people who thought they couldn't manage their lives without the drug actually can, I firmly believe there's a positive story in that. It's worth it. A richer, deeper life awaits. I've never, not once, seen someone regret regaining their full range of emotions, however messy, if they're supported in navigating and understanding that landscape, not fearing it, and obviously if we taper the correct way. And all this, of course, is messed by the fact that the first emotional state you enter when you reduce the dose is not you. That's the whole point, because withdrawal can be emotional too. But after that one settles, having help in navigating that landscape. And ironically, maybe not so ironically for people in here, but I find from the bottom of the evidence hierarchy, I find that people often become less prone to relapse when they're off in the right way, because they can finally feel themselves again. Rocket science, apparently, to the field. So when that chemical veil lifts and there's support present, people recover their agency, their intuition, their boundaries, their inner compass. Thank you.